Good evening, and welcome to another episode of my Pro Wrestling Society podcast. And today I'm going to be just sharing with you a list of my favorite pro wrestlers of all time. Um, Keep in mind that this is going to be a really long list, so so you might want to sit back or do whatever. Um, okay, first favorite pro wrestler is the Undertaker. Man, like I watched him as a kid growing up, and uh, I was just mind blown. I was amazed. I was scared at the same time because I thought, man, this dude is a freaking walking dead man. Came back from the grave, and you can't die and everything. I mean, it was just crazy how I saw the way he walked, for everything, the way he walked, the way he wrestled, the way he talked. It was just wow. Um, Even like I remember the kids back in my day, they used to have these debates where they would they would literally discuss whether he was a man or some immortal being or whatever the heck, because he just didn't seem human. Like I legit believe that that whenever he got killed or something, supposedly he would literally get killed and then rise up from the dead. That's how believable his appearances were and everything. Um, I'm gonna start. What I loved most about him was his whole entrance. With um, when he would come in and there would be all this smoke, and especially his theme where uh, it would literally sound like the Grim Reaper is making his presence known in the arena, and and there would be smoke coming out, and you'd hear the bells and everything, and it'd get dark. Death was coming for you, and if you were ready for it, then you were on your way to hell or something. and and yeah, so his entrance was just so memorable, and even though it took a long time, and I got impatient a little bit, it was just daunting, dramatic, and scary because he made his presence known. He didn't rush his entrance. He took his time, um, making everybody feel that fear and you know that anticipation in the whole arena, and that made the match all the more better. What I also liked about him is his striking game and his grappling skills. I know he's versed in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, at least in his dead man days. In his yeah, like that triangle choke that he does on his opponents, that was just flat out brutal. The way he locks it in, and how quickly his opponents get choked out, and sometimes they'll even like puke blood or something. It shows you how brutal this move is, Hell's Gate is, and especially when their windpipe gets damaged, from what I heard, just insane. Um, and then of course I love his all his air. He has all sorts of moves, aerial moves, ground moves. A whole bunch of power bombs and crap, especially, and of course you can't forget the tombstone finisher, which will lay somebody out quick. Oh, yeah. When first time I saw Undertaker do the tombstone was when I was a kid, watching about like when I was 5. I legit thought somebody died doing that move. It was unbelievable. And then we have stuff like um, I can't remember the name of that move, but when he walks on the ropes uh, when he's got his opponent in like an arm lock or something, and then he jumps down and just slams his forearm on their back, and then they go down. Oh, that's mad painful. And it's incredible how he could keep his balance like that. Same when he jumps out of the ropes, over the ropes actually, and just dives on his opponents. That's just freaking insane. Yeah, I like how he's all balanced out and everything. And his character, oh my goodness, his character is unlike any other. Um, they don't call him the Phenom or the Dead Man for nothing. He earned those names, and with his size, the way he rolls his eyes back and just sticks his tongue out and just intimidates his enemies like that, showing that he's not scared and he's the real deal and he's immortal. It just it's pretty scary, and the way, and especially when he barely shows any pain, like when you hit him and crap, he just takes it like it's no big deal, like it's nothing to him, and even and he could be dazed and everything and against like a powerful opponent, but he's still not going to show any pain. He's not going to whimper. He's not going to beg for mercy. He's just going to keep going, and that's what makes him really formidable in the ring. Especially when he does those epic comebacks where he just all of a sudden you think it's over, 1, 2, and then he just raises his arm up and kicks out, and oh my goodness, and then he sits up and then just looks at you real quick like, you did not just do that to me. And it's scary because you're gonna get it. and then he gets up and chokes you out, and then just choke slams you and makes his comeback and whatnot. Like I would hate to be his opponents, just wondering, is this dude even gonna, like, is this dude even human? Like, what the deal is? Yeah, and he's had a lot of great matches, like with Batista, Kurt Angle, Mick Foley, Edge, Randy Orton. The list goes on and on and on. Especially those Hell in a Cell matches where he would get busted open and he started bleeding, and he somehow, some way, he still kicks out and still keeps going. It's unbelievable. I don't even know how he does it, but at that point, it's like, is this dude even a god or something? Yeah, and just the excitement he brings in the ring is just, it's unlike anything in wrestling. Like when I finished watching some of his best matches with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, I was exhausted emotionally, physically, mentally, you name it, because of how dramatic and epic those matches were. And as far as his appearance goes, I love it. I love his trench coat. I love his hat and everything. Pretty much, it just suits him so well. Like, and that's all I got to say about the Undertaker. Next favorite wrestler is Raven. Oh my goodness. A lot of you know him from ECW, of course, but I actually started watching him when he was in TNA in his early NWA TNA days. Those, and same as the early TNA days. Those are my favorite. That was actually in my opinion, his best run of his whole career. Um, but overall, I just love his all of his runs pretty much. His ECW run, WCW run, TNA run, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm a huge fan of him. Oh, I don't even know where to start. As far as his character goes, I could totally relate to his character. You know, um, that dark persona with just flat out, anger and aggression and violence and uh and sorrow and whatnot. Like I could relate to all the stuff that he went through. Like because I had as far as having a traumatic childhood, an abusive childhood, and family problems. I had that when I was a kid. So a lot of the stuff he was actually talking about, it was deep. And um, as far as his promos go, wow, he was, in my opinion, he's one of the best talkers in the wrestling world, if not the best, because the way he cuts it is just it's so philosophical, poetic in some sense. Um, just angry, violent, emotional, action packed, you name it. It's also dramatic and the way he delivers it is just spot on. I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I have like almost every promo he cuts, I'm a fan of because of just how solid each one is and how good he is in cutting the promos. But um, I'm gonna just talk about his evolution as a wrestler, because he had like several gimmick changes. Actually, he had, yeah, probably about two, maybe. Not really sure, but yeah. And when he was at ECW and WCW, I loved his leather jacket and his appearance, just the way he looked. I thought that was pretty unique. Um, and and uh, and his entrance was, I didn't really like the theme of it. Like uh, I like the band The Offspring, but I didn't like that particular song. I don't know why. Um, but his character was just in your face. He just didn't care at all. He was just straight up angry, like especially he would just he's just flat out violent, and especially when he would go up against Tommy Dreamer and just bust him up like with a whole bunch of weapons and stuff and uh and um and the Sandman and he did a lot of effed up things, and especially when he would be with the mind games, when he was um kidnapping the Sandman's family and using them against them. That was effed up. But I loved it. I just loved how he was hella smart and knew how to just destroy his opponents piece by piece, especially in I mean, me personally, I see that more often in TNA when he would paint his face black, and well, he would do the face paint on and paint his fingernails and whatnot, and just he was just the toughest of the tough. He didn't care who it was. If it was a wrestler, an employee, a fan, it didn't matter. He would F you up real quick. He didn't care if you were bigger than him, how if you were better than him at wrestling. He would find a way to almost kill you in the ring with weapons and a whole bunch of stuff, like stick his fingers in your eyes, do whatever he needed to. And that's what made it. He needed to. Sorry about that. And that's what made him so ruthless, so uh, aggressive, so just brutal. And he would not let anybody stand in his way of getting what he wanted. Like he was all, he was just willing to do whatever it took to take what was his. And I also loved his his outspread wings. Did some kind of crucifix pose. Not I think it's subject to interpretation, but I wrote about it somewhere. Can't remember how to explain it, but I think it's a mix of like raven wings and also something that has to do with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and basically this new reinterpretation of it. Something about being a martyr to society and whatnot. And I also loved his straight jacket. The one he used in TNA when he got supposedly he got locked up over I don't know, going crazy and whatnot, and same with the kill. I love the kill. Like I love almost all the clothing that he wore. And his ring psychology was so on point. It was just unbelievable how important it was. He would make it look like it was the realest thing you ever seen. And I think to me, that's the ultimate skill in pro wrestling, because it's supposed to look real as possible. The moves aren't really, to me, they're not really that important. But what made me, such a big fan of his matches was the way he sold each of his moves and everything. And he would express his pain and stuff and whatnot, and in such a way that it made you actually believe that he was hurt, and he probably was hurt with the stuff that he was doing and whatnot. It was just crazy. And also his ring awareness, the way he was, he just looked around and took advantage of a lot of opportunities, was also made it really believable. And I know I'm jumping back and forth, but I loved his at TNA. I just loved his entrance. It was just same with WCW. I loved his theme entrances. And as far as his moves go, I just love all of them. His 5 signature moves: the Raven effect, running bulldog, Russian leg sweep, running drop toe hold, discus clothesline, uh, I can't remember if he had more. I can't remember right now, but he had a bunch of them, and those were the most memorable ones. Um, I loved how they were so well thought out and creative, because most guys, when they do the Russian leg sweep, they'll usually do it on the mat. And but when Raven does it, he'll take his opponent to the actual steel rails and just do it right there, and boom, it would just do maximum damage. It's just seeing the pain on his opponent's faces is just wow. It's just crazy imagine having your spine hit that steel rail and just bounce off, and especially since there's a lot of sensitive nerve endings on your back. So just imagine that pain that those guys must be feeling. Must have been, horrible. And discus clothesline, I love how he throws in a couple jabs to stun his opponent before he does the actual clothesline. And with the running bulldog, I also love how he Irish whips his opponent into the ring ropes, then he rushes in and builds momentum, and then his opponent hits the ring post. So it actually does a lot of damage, but that's not all, because they bounce off of it, and then he's coming in, and he puts him in a headlock, runs in, and then just boom, just does the bulldog right there, and it does maximum damage. With all that pain that they had to go through, they were laid out. and it was just pretty unique, because a lot of guys that I've seen, it stands out because they only do the bulldog when the opponent is standing. They don't build any momentum or do anything like that. So I thought that was pretty unique, and creative too. And same with the drop toe hold. When he's he'll set up a chair, and then again Irish whip his opponents to the ropes. Then he drops down and trips them over, and then they hit their heads against the chair and just wham, just get knocked out, and then just fall over, and then he goes for the pin. Those are really creative moves that not many wrestlers can do well, in my opinion. But what really makes him so tough in the ring was his ability to withstand all the things that the wrestlers threw at him. He had such a high pain tolerance, and he essentially fed off of pain, as he said in a lot of his promos and stuff. Because it's like I said in an episode I did. If wrestling, it doesn't really matter when you got a guy who can take whatever you throw at him in a match, and he's still able to kick out of all the moves. That's pretty much the toughest opponent you can ever face. And yeah, basically, he's not afraid to take a hit to give a hit, like he said. And that's pretty much what I love most about him, and I agree with his viewpoints. So, yeah, pretty much all I had to say. Next wrestler, Sabu, is one of my all-time favorites. Again, I knew him mostly from TNA, around the NWA TNA era, and actually Spike TV era as well. And wow, I don't even know where to begin with him either. He's put up like tons of great matches. I love his high flying abilities. the and technical wrestling holds when he does the camel clutch arm and a whole bunch of other stuff too. Those are just insane how he would set up a chair, run to the ropes, and then just jump off the chair and then stop himself when he lands on the ropes for like a minute and then fly towards his opponent. Wow. I just went berserk when I saw that. And as far as his and he's hella agile too. Like his opponent could throw him up in the air, and then he would just do this amazing counter where he would use his own momentum to basically throw them over with, I don't know, it was a hurricanrana or something of that sort. It was just unbelievable how fast and agile he was on his feet, and just how well he was able to use everything. The ropes, the chairs, tables, didn't really matter. Just all over the place. And some of the risk he took, like when he'd dive off ladders and do leg drops on his opponents off of chairs and tables and all kinds of crazy stuff. Wow. And his gimmick is I love it. I love his Saudi Arabian headdress. I love his signature pose. I love the pants he wore and whatnot. It fits him so well. And I also love the fact that he doesn't talk at all. 'Cause that's really what stands out. You don't always have to talk in wrestling. You can make it without saying a word. You just gotta have, in my opinion, you gotta have presence in body language and in actions, and he did that extremely well. Also, what I loved about him was the fact that he actually started at least from what I looked up, he was the one who made tables, the use of tables and chairs popular, at least in America. And his level of pain tolerance is just off the charts. Can't believe how much pain he's able to withstand. He's been through barbed wire, thumbtacks, you name it, just tables, a whole bunch of stuff. It was just unbelievable the amount of pain he's able to withstand, especially when he got his jaw broke and everything and suffered a bunch of injuries. It's just he's hardcore. I could say that much just from watching his matches. Next guy is Abdullah the Butcher, another one of my favorites. He his character was just maniacal, hardcore, sadistic, brutal, bloodthirsty, you name it. I loved how he didn't care about the rules. He didn't care about winning or losing. He just wanted to kill somebody in the ring and outside of the ring. The way he would just take his opponents out, they would go around the everywhere pretty much. And then he would just start stabbing away with the fork and whatnot. and anything pretty much. He would choke him out, and it was just utter chaos. And he wasn't scared to take hits either. He would just if you made him bleed, he would just take the blood, lick it off himself, cover his face in it, and then just keep fighting. He would just go into the frenzy when he'd look at his own blood. and so that's pretty much what made him so entertaining. And also, I love the fact that he uses those judo chops and knowledge from karate in his matches, especially for a big guy himself. I think he was. If you watch his really classic Japan matches, he used a lot of a lot of technical wrestling and nerve holes and whatnot. So I think he was. I loved his hardcore matches, especially that one with Hannibal, where he just bashes the coffee pot in his head. I was like, ah! Especially with the amount of blood he starts coming out of his head and everything. That was just brutal. It was just savage. And okay, now I love his hardcore wrestling style, but I thought his his knowledge of submission holds and whatnot, I thought that was pretty underrated. Pretty good too. With a running elbow drop and especially that throat jab to the oh, that's just vicious. It would just take out an opponent real quick, like just cut off the airways and have him laid out. And yeah, that's especially when he just it does a lot more damage to his opponents and whatnot. It's just wow. So that's pretty much all I had to say about Abdullah the Butcher. Next guy is Great Khali. I saw him as a kid around 2006. He was a good technical wrestler because the stuff he did was just pretty impressive for a big guy. Like he would do the when he'd do the vice grip, that would look really, really painful because he'd just clasp his opponent's head with his hands and just press real tight. And same, he would also wear down the neck and whatnot, and he'd do something else. I can't really remember what he did, but you could clearly see that he knew how to wrestle. I don't know why people say he doesn't. And also with those Khali chops, man, those are just flat out savage. Like when I hear just the sound of it bash against the skulls of other wrestlers or the chest and everything. Oh, it's just boom, boom, boom. That was wicked. That was just flat out brutal. And then you see him drop. Really, really savage. And I was legit scared of him when he first made his appearance. It was just scary the way he would roar and come in, and the size of this guy was just amazing, and the way he'd look at you and just stare you down, not saying anything, just flat out staring you down, and there was nothing you could do to bring him down. He would try to demoralize you physically and psychologically just by standing there. And when when you try to do some punches, it would have no effect. Same with the kicks. Same with some aerial move that some high flyers do. He would just take it, and then he would just keep staring you down and trying to wear you out. And then when you finally get to do a move, he just bashes your head with his hand and whatnot, and then gets you. Even if you were really quick, there's really nothing you could do to physically overpower this guy, because this guy was a monster. And and that's what made him pretty entertaining, and that's why whenever he'd go up against his opponents in the ring, is just pretty brutal, honestly. I like, especially when he made his first appearance, I think, just bashing the Undertaker up. I legit thought the Undertaker was gonna die, because the look on his face and the way he was, almost unconscious and whatnot, it was just pretty worrisome. But then I don't know, I just stopped liking him after like 2006. Like later on, they just turned him into a hype man or whatnot, and I wasn't really a fan of it. I thought I liked the old Khali because he meant business. He was also pretty cruel too, when he would just constantly choke slam Rey Mysterio everywhere. Didn't really matter where it was, Next guy, George Hackenschmidt. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't know who that is, and because that's way too old school for most people. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any of his matches, so I just read them online. And this guy was a freaking legend. He was actually one of the early pioneers of pro wrestling. He's what him and Frank Gotch are what made the pro wrestling famous worldwide. From what I do know, I know that he's correct me if I'm wrong, but he had some knowledge in catch as can wrestling, and I heard he was really strong and really quick. He usually ended like the match in no more than about a minute. He would they would lock up, and then he would take his opponents out real quick, like boom, it was already over. And he also introduced fitness and nutrition to the pro wrestling, talking about how pro wrestlers should abstain from drugs and actually work out, not use the stuff that unfortunately a lot of people in pro wrestling have used. Like I think probably around the 90s or today, I don't know, drugs, steroids, all that crap. And I also heard a lot about his strength. This guy got recognition from even the president. I think it's Truman or someone who said it. If I could be any man in the world, I would be George Hackenschmidt or something like that. And his strength, he was just unbelievable. I heard he could lift up a small pony with one arm. That was mind blowing. And I also loved his match with Frank Gotch, because, well, what I didn't like about it was when Frank Gotch cheated, supposedly by rubbing oil on all over his body to make him more slippery, and that's why George Hackenschmidt's undefeated streak was lost. But also that was probably one of the earliest matches that started the whole babyface versus heel concept. So it's a win-win situation to me. Next guy, Mick Foley. Another one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. I watched him as a kid when he, as Mankind, when he went up against Undertaker. And wow, dude was just off the charts insane. He was just everything about him. His style, his promos, his the gimmicks he cut was just phenomenal. His okay, he wasn't really good at wrestling technical stuff, all those holds and whatnot, and wasn't the best wrestler in that regard, But what made him stand out was just the drama, the level of pain he was willing to take, and just his ruthlessness, really, and doing like some stuff to his opponents, like he'd drive Terry Funk through the barbed wire boards with bombs under them, C4, I think, in his barbed wire match in Japan, and wow, crazy! This dude was unstoppable. It didn't matter what you did to him. How bloody he was, how injured he was. He would just not surrender whatsoever. He would always kick out of everything, and that's what made me such a big fan of his. And same with his promos. Wow, he another one of my all-time favorite promo cutters in wrestling, because whenever he'd cut promos, it looks like he was having a mental breakdown. He would just be bashing his head with his fists and whatnot, and a lot of the stuff came from the heart. You could tell that he was real about the stuff he was saying, and during one promo he cut on Terry Funk, he said something about if he couldn't beat him, then he would quit wrestling, and then he would talk about the real definition of hardcore was about kicking out of the moves rather than doing the moves. That was just powerful, and especially his catchphrase when he go bang bang. I also love that. I thought that was pretty much decent, considering how his Cactus Jack character was some kind of outlaw or something like that. It was hard to describe, but yeah, I love his gimmicks. The Mankind gimmick, especially where he'd stick his fingers in his opponent's mouth and go, and he'd start shrieking like like a freaking animal and whatnot, and trying to torture his opponents and do all the all this crazy stuff, and I loved his Mankind gimmick too, and his Cactus Jack gimmick. But those are pretty much the only ones that I actually liked. I didn't really like his Dude Love gimmick. I don't know. I thought it was funny at times, but not that much. I don't know. It was just cringe to me. um, Next guy is Batista. Wow, I I grew up watching him when I was a kid, and um, I was hyped up whenever he'd come in. You know, his theme would pop up, and he was ripped, and he was pumped up for some action. Like he was ready to go. That's that they didn't call him the animal for nothing, because this guy was was on a rampage. He was just out to get somebody, and I loved how you know, when he'd come in, he would just go straight to, you know, I can't remember exactly what he did, but he was just going in on punches and kicks and whatnot, and his power moves and he was all over the place. Especially when he came, he made those comebacks. Goodness gracious, the way he did it was just flat out amazing. Like he didn't care. He you know, he would get beat up and everything, and suffer a lot of pain, and but somehow, some way, he would get an adrenaline rush, and then the beast from within would awaken and it would be unleashed. He was just he would start, you know, he would just go berserk, start, you know, doing his thing, and then you just start bashing his opponents left and right, boom, 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 and then he would just uh, go the extra mile by taking um, you know, the steel steps, bring him to the ring, take his opponent, and just boom, do this giant Batista bomb over and over again, and then he'd be like, ah! I was feeling it too. I was getting an adrenaline rush too. It was just that had me going nuts, and just seeing him just overcome the odds and just turn into a flat out animal, disregarding the rules, was just it was just out of this world insane. But that's what I loved most about him, was his comebacks and the way, you know, the way he would wrestle. He wasn't scared of anybody, pretty much. Um, he was willing to take on everyone in the ring. Didn't matter who it was. He was ready to go. Um, and that's pretty much it. That's all I had to say on Batista. Next guy is Stone Cold, another one of my all-time favorites, because you know, he was just a flat-out outlaw. He you know, kind of character. He some anti-hero. You know, and I didn't love. I just love his appearance. I didn't really like his promos other than the Austin 316 one. I thought they were funny, and same with his interviews. I was just okay. They were okay. I take it back. I did like him, but not. But some of them were kind of not really feeling it. But what really made up for it was just how hilarious he was. You know, he was cussing everybody out. I just loved his didn't care attitude. He was just breaking the rules all the time, getting in trouble, getting arrested and whatnot. He clearly was one of the top dogs in the WWF, WWE, and so iconic as well. Um, you know, when he would, especially with his signature move, the Stone Cold Stunner, and he was a straight up brawler too, and that's also what I love about it. His style is unique, and it fit his personality. Because this is a guy you wouldn't want to get in a fight with in a bar, because he was just he wasn't the typical wrestler who was about submission holds like the other people, like Bret Hart. Screw that guy. I loved. I mean, and speaking of Bret Hart, I love that match that he had with him at WrestleMania. Can't remember which one it was, but it was just unforgettable. Especially at the end where Stone Cold gets his head busted open, and he did what probably no one else could ever do, and that was nearly break out of his submission hold. And then he got revenge on him by applying it to him, and later on. But wow, that match was just amazing. And that's pretty much it. That's all I had to say on him. But another thing I wanted to add was how also what I liked about him was the way he stared people down. You could just see whether it was a fan or his rival. You could tell he was really into it. He was really fierce and whatnot. But yeah, okay. Next guy is Monty Brown. I thought he was underrated overall in general, but I loved him when he was at TNA. Especially his theme when he would have this his Disturbed theme. Well, I don't know if it was based on Disturbed, but it pretty much sounded like it was. Like it sounded like it was. I guess it was the instrumental to "Down with the Sickness," and when he came out, it looked like he was just on the prowl, on the hunt, looking to get his prey. Not screw opponents. He was looking for prey. Everybody who was in the Serengeti was considered prey to him because he was the alpha male. He was the top of the food chain, and that's what I loved about his character. He was just on everybody. And I'm not a big fan of his promos. I thought he could have used a little bit more. Or then again, he didn't really have that much time to develop fully. But I like some of them. Like I remember this one where I watched during his match with Jeff Hardy, where he was like, "If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got." That was really killer, and that was hella hard too. Some of them were actually funny, like the one when he called Samoa Joe Fat Joe. That was hilarious, and it was just all over the place. And his rep, by when he got in the ring, he would just get down to business. It was just he wasn't playing any games. He would do the pounce all over the place, and just the impact was so devastating. It was just boom, like a freight train. We're coming right at you. You could have suffered broken ribs, bruised organs, internal bleeding, concussions, all that stuff, man. It was just wow. It was just insane, just brutal. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just he was just looking to freaking kill his opponents. And same as the Alpha Bomb. I also love that too. Um, I can't remember his other moves, but yeah, all pretty much all I had to say on Monty Brown. Um, so the next guy is Jeff Hardy, another one of my favorites. I got into him like he's the one who actually got me back into wrestling. Um, when I think around the late 2000s, I just dabbled in wrestling and then I saw the face paint and whatnot, and so I decided to check him out. And they didn't call him the charismatic enigma for nothing, because his appearance, aside from his appearance, um, which was I thought was pretty sick and unique. He was, especially with the glow in the dark face paint, that was pretty, and the designs and the clothes that he wore, pretty unique. And aside from that, I just loved how the way he wrestled was charismatic, and it took the fans into account. He would try to get them involved, and and whatnot, and then he would do these ridiculously dangerous and sick moves where he would climb up the ladder and dive off of it and swanton bomb his opponent through a table, and I just went berserk. He was just wild, like it was unbelievable. And he was also pretty dope high flyer, and um and he comes off as a person who really loves his fans, and he's willing to take risks to get what needs to be done. Do whatever it takes to win the match, and it's really inspirational. And and uh, and whatnot. I'm a fan of all of his matches, pretty much his indie matches, his WWE matches, his TNA matches. Well, not all of them, but all of his runs, rather, not matches. Um, Not the best promo cutter. Um, save some instances, but he's pretty good overall as a wrestler. Next guy is Bobby Lashley. I'm a fan of his, his aggressive kind of military style um, wrestling moves and whatnot. He's just crazy, crazy. And I saw him I started watching him during the WWE Ruthless Aggression era, and he was pretty good. I can't remember everything that he did, but because I'll have to watch it again. But he was really, really good. Um, Especially, I guess the most notable incident was when he got tired of Finley and Hornswoggle always stealing the show and always uh, putting, cheating and putting wrestlers out of a commission. So he did this crazy thing one time where he would, where he literally tried to kill, I think Finley first by taking his shillelagh and throwing it, and then they brawl outside of the arena, and then they reach like a car, and then he would try to freaking push the car over and onto Finley. Probably would have crushed him to death, and he actually did it too. But fortunately, Finley got out of the way from with help, and that was just insane. um, that's all I had to say on Lashley. Next guy is R-Truth. I love his entrance. I love his gimmicks. You know, the K Quick and the the truth. And this guy was just hella entertaining, especially when he'd come out rapping, freestyling, and breakdancing. Everybody would get hyped to it. And as far as his moves go, it was just wild. When he'd mix, um, breakdancing with some high flying stunts. That was just really really entertaining. That was pretty pretty memorable. I can't remember. I don't know the exact names of his moves, but all I know is that I just loved it the way he'd do it, like a split, dodging a couple of blows, and then he just follow up with like a with I don't know. I can't remember the sequence, but it was just really entertaining. And I remember this one time where um he'd jump off the ropes and then he'd headbutt his opponent straight in the groin, boom, and I was like, ooh. That was also hella brutal. Um, as far as his promos goes, I love his promos at TNA the most. I thought those were his best. That was his best work because he was calling out WWE for racism, and the stuff he was saying was so true. Because he felt like he was a victim of as a black person, and it wasn't really treated well. And I mean, I agree with him because I mean, there's a lot. I mean, to me, it seems like there's a bunch of racism that happens in the pro wrestling world. Nobody really wants to talk about it, or but it's there. So pretty much, I also love R-Truth's music, some songs at least, and pretty much it. Okay, next up is New Jack. Um, I'm not really a fan of of his okay. Okay, he's not the guy who's about, putting arm locks and stuff. He actually said it himself. He's not that kind of guy. He's straight up hardcore. And that's what I loved about him. He was just um all about entertaining the fans by, bashing people with bottles and kendo sticks and anything really, bats, trash cans, and that was pretty entertaining to watch. And his promos were off the charts. He was just the most hardcore things he ever said was how he didn't really care about titles or wins or losses. He just cared about beating his opponents till he couldn't beat them anymore and killing them and whatnot. It doesn't get any more hardcore than that. I was a I was a huge fan of his promos because of how real he was. He wasn't acting. It wasn't a gimmick. It was legit, straight up New Jack 24/7. He didn't care at all. He didn't care about how you felt. He didn't care about what you thought. He just didn't care at all. He was just straight up in your face, and he was out to get somebody. and that's what made him stand out to me as a wrestler from the other guys out there. And I one of my all-time favorite matches was him and Necro Butcher. That was pretty much uh, pretty much it right there. That was probably the best match of his whole career because of how bloody it was and the stuff they were doing and whatnot and pretty entertaining. Next up is Melissa Coates. I'm pretty sure most people haven't heard of her, but I came across a Sabu interview with her in it, and so I decided to check her out. And wow, I was pretty amazed at her matches. The at least some of them actually, yeah, some of them just the moves that she did and the action, the holds, submission holds, the locks, everything. It was just wow. It was just no nothing like nothing high flying. That's what I love most about her, was how she was about out wrestling men and women rather than doing the typical high flying stunts that a lot of women do, and also just look at how buff she is and how big she is. Oh, I was like, good lord. Wow. That's what also made her stand out, just her size and sheer strength. That was just, she was the alpha female of professional wrestling because of how just the way she managed to somehow pick up guys and gals and throw them everywhere, and I loved her heel character in the Indies, and how the way she was mad disrespectful to the fans and to the wrestlers themselves, and especially when she would just body slam them and then just put her boot in their face and pin them that way, and then backhand them. It didn't matter if it was a guy or a gal. It was just straight up hilarious. Really, really entertaining. Her promos, I can only think of one that really stood out. Unfortunately, it got cut short because it was done on a phone, I think. So that was a bummer. I really would have liked to see her on the mainstream TV, but that didn't happen. So, but at least overall, I really enjoyed her career. Didn't matter what promotion. It didn't really matter what promotion it was. I just enjoyed it, especially at NWA Anarchy. Okay, next one is Sexy Star. I love Sexy Star. Because she's genuine. She's nice. The character you see her portray in Lucha Underground is the same one. She's the same person. Her character is who she is in real life. She's real 100%. No games, nothing like that. No, nothing fake about her. She's charismatic, and she doesn't give up no matter what the circumstances are. She's willing to fight and keep fighting until she can't fight anymore. And her backstory is just so inspirational and so emotional because it's straight up genuine. Like when she talked about how she was suicidal, and then she would somehow make it out, like going through some problems with self-esteem and whatnot, and then she got into lucha libre, and then decided to go all out in her life and become a luchadora and a female role model. That's what really made her stand out. And wasn't always the best, didn't always put up the best matches or the best promos, except during Lucha Underground in some cases. But I just loved how she had a lot of heart as a face. And a lot of drive and you name it, character overall. I liked how she's not she's pretty, but she's not how do I say it? She doesn't, she said it herself in an interview, she doesn't let her beauty define her, and instead chose to wear a mask to show that she's talented and whatnot. She can be talented, and it has nothing to do with her looks or anything like that. And yeah, that's all I had to say on that. Okay, next guy is El Mesias, or as you know, Judas Mesias or Mil Muertes. It's all the same person. I started watching him when he was at TNA, when he was going up against Abyss. That was probably one of the most bloodiest matches ever seen. It was just crazy, and especially the storylines, those are just unbelievable. It was also got really dark too. His character was pretty much wow. As a face, he could play the face and the heel so well. Either one, he could do those exceptionally well. And just the way he did it, he could be the meanest wrestler you ever met or the nicest one you ever met, and he got the fans to hate him as El Mesias when he was a heel at AAA, but when he turned back to a face, he redeemed himself. If you're familiar with that storyline, he became like the top face of the company, and because of how charismatic he was and whatnot, he was a hell of a talent too. A great wrestler with a lot of. He's done some crazy counters and whatnot, and moves and he put up a lot of epic matches during his career. I'm gonna get into that later though. I just loved his character overall, like the way he presented himself as this sort of kind of Undertaker kind of figure. Not really though. But also, I guess what I also loved about him was his he cut some of the best promos in wrestling. I think about maybe like only two of them were my actual favorite because of the content that it had and what the stuff he was saying came deep from the heart. And that's what matters a lot in wrestling, because a lot of guys they don't really do that, at least in my opinion. And another one of my favorite gimmicks of his is the Mil Muertes gimmick, because of how because of how aggressive, how violent he is, and you know, with the mask and his backstory, the way he would look at people, and the way he would take a bunch of hits and whatnot, and just it was just, and the stuff he would do to people was just flat out hardcore. Oh, and that's another thing I liked about him, was just how hardcore of a wrestler he was. You know, going through tables, going through tacks, glass, getting hit with stuff. It was just crazy. Uh, Especially with the matches he had with Vampiro throughout their careers. It was just brutal, bloodthirst, you know, just bloody. I could go on and on. And my favorite, I just had a lot of favorite matches by him. Um, as far as his Mil Muertes character, I loved his whole stage presence and presentation and whatnot. And especially when he would do the flatliner, because that looked hella devastating. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say on him. Next guy is Abyss. He's one of my all-time favorites. Um, I loved how he, I loved his character. I loved his entrance. Um, and the way the him back in the old days when he didn't talk, and his mask and everything, the presentation, all of that. That's what really made him stand out. And the fact that he could wrestle with almost anybody and go berserk was just crazy. And he was smart too for a big dude. Um, he would do all these submission holds and locks and stuff, and pretty impressive. And he was hell of a hardcore wrestler, because he was willing to take pain, go through tacks and barbed wire and a bunch of stuff. Um, as far as his his gimmick goes, I mean, his backstory. I was a fan. Uh, I was pretty much a fan of all of it, almost all of it. I could relate to it on a personal level, as I explained earlier. Um, and from a psychological level, during a storyline, it pretty much his motive was for getting hurt, as he explained it, or rather, yeah, pretty much was to punish himself over what happened during his childhood, and pretty hardcore stuff, not just physically but psychologically, and mentally, and 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 dude was a savage, straight up. Um, Next one is John Cena. I'm a huge fan of John Cena. Back in the old days, you know, back in the uh, when he started out, ruthless aggression period. Um, you know, when he his thugonomics gimmick and whatnot. I'm a big fan of his theme, because it was so memorable, it was so catchy, it was so hype, and it's what got me into the match even more. Um, I loved his just how built he was and how strong he was. He was crazy strong. He would take lift up like two guys at the same time, and wow, it was unbelievable. He'd make it look so real. He'd be like, oh, just to show how powerful he was. Oh my goodness. And his appearance was just straight up thug. Like he would just walk around with with a chain around his neck, and his spinner belt, and and I just loved how passionate he was in the ring. Like he would sell and like crazy. And the moves he did were just freaking painful, like the STFU and the FU and all those power moves. Sorry about that. I just loved how freaking unbreakable he was, and almost seemingly invincible. Yeah, he didn't play around. He was all about, taking, beating his opponents up and whatnot. And you would think that their backs would break or something like that because of how hard you would hit them. And his promos were funny, hilarious, especially when he'd rap battle fans and whatnot. And oh my goodness, I would bust it out laughing for days, especially the interviews and whatnot. And yeah, I really enjoyed him. He was hella entertaining. I don't know about now because I don't keep up with WWE and that bull crap. But I mean, I'd watch just for him, just to see him and his whole persona, because it's real, like hustle, loyalty, respect. I love John Cena. Next is Rey Mysterio. Also another one of my all-time favorites. I used to look up to him as a kid because he was one of the guys that made me proud to be Mexican, because I'm Mexican American. And just his whole persona, is just full of charisma and inspiration and whatnot. And I just love his high flying moves, and some of his promos were deep and whatnot, and a whole just a whole bunch of stuff that he did was just phenomenal. Like he would use his own momentum against his opponents, and it didn't matter if it was a big guy or a small guy. He knew how to move in the ring. He was quick, and I love his music as well because I know he dropped a couple of tracks. So yeah, pretty much all I had to say on him. I'll keep you posted on other things I like about him in the future. Same with all these other wrestlers. Okay, next up is Chyna. I'm not really a particular big fan of particularly a big fan of her matches, except a few. I just thought her character was solid. Especially when WWE had an angle of where she would they would get in a bar fight or something like that. It was just it was just entertaining. Um, and that was pretty much it. I just I just loved that part of her. And R.I.P. to Chyna, and that's pretty much it. Okay, next guy is Tatanka. I was a huge fan of him. I love the way he wrestled and how how he showed some Native American pride in the ring, and yeah, and I loved his style and whatnot. Um, but that's about it. I haven't really watched him that much. I'm gonna have to do that later. Um, but yeah, he was pretty entertaining. Next guy is Tajiri. I felt like he's underrated as a Japanese wrestler because of the stuff that he does. Man, that's just off the charts, insane. It was hella skilled the way he would pull off some of his submission holds and whatnot. Um, it's just nasty with those kicks and punches and whatnot. And he had he had a lot of talent as far as that goes. I haven't checked out much of his stuff, but his speed, his the way he was at least during in every match was just hella entertaining. Even though I'm not really a fan of Japanese wrestling that much, but Tajiri is one exception. Um, that's all I had to say on him. Bull Nakano, on another one of my favorite female wrestlers because of how, first of all, her size and her aggression, her no nonsense attitude when it comes to wrestling. Like she looks like she could legit F you up in the ring. And like I remember like she had to stare down with a couple of wrestlers in the ring before she would clothesline him or bash him in the head and they would start bleeding. Like, dang. Oh, just I wouldn't want to mess with her, and she's crazy enough to jump off the ring ropes. Not the ring ropes. She did this one high spot where she would go all the way up to the top of the cage and just dive off of it and leg drop her opponent and go for the pin. Just crazy. And I love her style too. Her the way she dresses and presents herself. I'm a fan of her in that regard. And I still need to finish watching her. Next guy is Paul Burchill. Another one of my favorites. I loved his gimmick, his pirate gimmick, because I thought that was pretty unique. When he was on SmackDown around the 2006, it was hella entertaining. It was funny too. He would legit have a sword out and everything and fly around places, like literally fly off of a rope during his entrance. So I thought that was pretty dope. As far as a wrestler, I don't remember much of him, but he was pretty good in the ring. That's all I had to say on him. The next guy is actually a tag team. The Mexicools. I love them too. They're hilarious. What I love most about them was just the entrance. They would drive like a tractor around and wave the Mexican flag and whatnot. I had me laughing. psychosis and super crazy. And they were a pretty good tag team, surprisingly. Um, I thought they were pretty underrated, but I really enjoyed just how crazy they were in the ring. Uh, and that's about it. That's all I had to say of them. I'll keep you posted later. Next guy is Vampiro. Um, wow, that guy was just I don't even know where to begin. But I enjoyed his work at WCW and his indie work, his indie matches, and all his pretty much every run he's been in, every company he's been in. I enjoyed it because he's so skilled with the stuff that he does. Like the cartwheel kicks and lucha libre martial arts style of wrestling. It really stood out to me, and his whole gimmick, his whole appearance was also pretty appealing to me, especially when he pretty much took on the form of a vampire and talked about being a misfit and an outcast, and which I could relate to a lot, especially when Raven would talk about it. As far as hardcore wrestling goes, he was also crazy. Uh, just brutal, bloody, you name it. He was willing. I mean, especially in AAA, he was willing to go through glass and whatnot, and tables, just bust himself up, even be set on fire. He was no joke, and he could play the face or the heel very well. Um, I know in AAA, he was a really big face. Like the fans loved him because of how charismatic he was, and he just connected well with them, especially the woman. uh, I caught some of them. They actually tried defending him from the heel. They would actually legit attack the heel in some instances, and whatnot. Um, I didn't really. Unfortunately, he didn't seem to be cut too many promos. I don't know if he had the chance to or whatnot, but that was a bit disappointing. I loved his work especially I loved his work in Lucha Underground when he faced off Pentagon Jr. and that feud was just amazing. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say on him. Next guy is Sting, another one of my favorites. Um, I love his whole character, his whole entrance. I didn't like his TNA theme, but I loved his how he would come in and put up dramatic presentation with his coat and his baseball bat and you name it. And he also loved how he would play mind games with his opponents, much like the Undertaker, and just confuse the hell out of everybody. They were really clever too. Um, I loved his ring work, his high flying moves and whatnot, and and Sorry about that. He had a lot of balanced moves. Like he would do high flying stuns, dives, submission holds, especially the Scorpion Deathlock, and wow, a lot of moves he did were just so memorable. Um, he was hella talented. Um, and he could cut some good promos. Uh, he dropped truth bombs like no other, and just put the truth out there. That's what I loved about him. And what I also loved about him was how he was honest, straight to the point, 100% uh, real about who he was and who he still is as a not just as a wrestler but as a person. If you keep up with his bio and his personal, uh, you know, his personal life, which he's talked about um, in interviews. Um, that's what I like about him, and just the character that he has, you know, the how clever he is. Like when he'll do this thing where he bounce off the ropes and then he just pretend to fall, but really but really he actually intends on headbutting his opponents in the groin. Um, so the ref can't really punish him for that because he made it look like an accident. So I thought that was pretty ingenious and smart on his part. Um, and and he had a lot of, especially in his comebacks, where he just start beating his chest and then just make this dramatic comeback like no other, and then he would start beating his opponents up. Uh, and that's pretty much all I had to say on him. Kurt Angle, one of my all-time favorites. I used to not like him, but when I saw what he did in the ring, as far as wrestling holds go and technical wrestling abilities, like wow, this guy was just hella skill. Like he gave over 100% in every single match. It was it was off the chain, especially considering he has a background in amateur wrestling, so that makes him so talented in the ring. And um and uh and yeah, pretty much. I don't know about his promos, but I know that I love his ring work, especially the when he does the ankle lock and the angle slam. And he would just go berserk, especially when he'd make a comeback. He'd have adrenaline pumping in his veins and whatnot, and then he'd just take off his singlet and be like, ah, straight up warrior, straight up beast mode. And uh, and that's pretty much all I had to say on him. And he was also pretty opportunistic in the ring and hella smart too. Um, when there was an opportunity, he would seize it. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it for Kurt Angle. Next guy uh Rhyno, another one of my favorites. I loved how he was such a powerhouse, and I loved his entrance, where he would just, especially in TNA, when he would just come bursting in, charging in like a freaking beast, like a freaking rhino, just coming in at his opponent's ready. He's pumped up. He doesn't care about who he's facing as long as there's somebody in the ring. He would just go straight in and just go boom, boom. And especially with the gore, it just looks so devastating, just like the pounce. It could like come in like a freaking rhino and just boom, you would be out cold. And unbelievable. The stuff he would do, and especially in hardcore matches, he would just get straight effed up, like get cut up and everything, and just driven through tables and whatnot, and unbelievable. And this is not someone you want to mess with. He cut some of the most intense promos in TNA, and wow, it was just straight up heat. you could feel the heat in the words that he used, like when he talked about how he was from Detroit, Michigan, the roughest part, and where it was all about survival one time. It was just, man, this guy was no joke. He didn't really cut a good promo all the time, but those are pretty much enough to solidify him as a wrestler. Because the stuff he said was just out there, especially when he was cussing out Vince McMahon one time during a TNA taping. And yeah, pretty much it for him. Next one is Ayako Hamada. I think she's pretty much underrated. She's a hell of a good in the ring, like quick, agile, especially with her kicks and whatnot, and a bunch of stuff. She comes from a family of wrestlers, so that should say a lot right there. Even though I can't, I don't know about her promos, but I just love her ring work. Love how talented she is in the ring in every promotion, pretty much. And that's all I had to say on her. I like Ruckus. I like his high flying stunts in the ring and how aggressive he is, and I don't think he gets that much attention, but I'm a big fan of his. Well, not really, at least not yet, but I'm getting there. I like Pagano a little bit. I just got into him, and dude is crazy. I remember one time at an indie show, he jumped straight off the top ropes, or actually in between the ropes, with fluorescent light tubes, and just crashed right into his opponents. That was crazy. That was just, wow. It was just unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire time of watching wrestling. So that's pretty much it for him. The Boogeyman, also one of my favorites. Love his theme, love his entrance, love his gimmick. He was just he was a freak. He was the Boogeyman of the WWE. It was just gruesome how he would eat a bunch of worms and whatnot, and just chew them up, and the way he'd look and sing lullabies and whatnot. Hella entertaining, especially in the ring, when the way he moved, the way he looked at his opponents. It was just hella entertaining. He wasn't the best ring performer, but I'm still a fan of his just for how entertaining he is. And that's all I got. And especially, I love the face paint because that's so ghoulish and sick. That's all I got to say on him. Next is Kobra Moon, another one of my favorites. Loved how essential she is in the ring. The way she's touching herself. Uh, and her whole character, just how uh just how I can't explain it, but it's how sly she is at times, and the stuff she does, and everything. And it's pretty ambitious and whatnot, and I like it. And um, as far as her wrestling wise, uh, extremely flexible, extremely um, agile as well. Um, so that's pretty much what made me a fan of hers. And yeah, pretty much. And okay, next person is Sienna. I'm a fan of hers, especially since she's she's like a mini the female version of Monty Brown with her power based moves and whatnot, and the stuff that she does in the ring is just it's pretty much it's just I don't even know how to describe it. It's just mind blowing, especially when she does the silencer, the AK-47. It just silences her opponents. uh, and I'm not really a fan of her more recent works, but I was a big fan of her match with Gail Kim and whatnot. Uh, and her, just that aggressive kind of character, and dominant kind of character too. I like girls who are like that. um. Okay, next person is Pentagon Junior, Pentagon Dark. I love both of those characters. Just the guy is straight up ruthless, aggressive, violent, bloody, bloodthirsty. You name it. He doesn't play any games. He he's uh he's just out to dominate. Just sometimes I feel like he's not even in it for the wins or the losses. He's just in it to legit make someone bleed like a stuffed pig and kill somebody in the ring. It doesn't matter if it's a wrestler, a fan. He's up to go against anybody, really. Like break their arms and whatnot. He's all about chaos, and and that's what makes him so dangerous in pro wrestling, because this is not somebody. He said it himself. He's not scared who he has to beat up and bloody. He's not scared who he has to hurt and make suffer. He will do whatever it takes to get what he wants, and that's not somebody you want to mess with, because he's all in your face. If you want to go, he'll go with you. He'll take you to hell. And same with, and he got real violent when he turned it to Pentagon Dark, because he didn't have uh, Vampiro to keep him in line. So, as he said, the darkness consumed his soul, and he became more vicious, more ruthless and whatnot on Lucha Underground. And yeah, and I loved his work uh, as say I loved some of his matches in AAA against Johnny Mundo and whatnot. And I loved how skilled he is in the ring as far as high flying goes. And didn't always cut the best promo, but he's cut some promos with some solid truth in them, some with intensity, and a lot of stuff. And yeah, pretty much it for him. Um, Next guy is Matanza. I was legit scared of this guy when I first saw him because of his size and his mask and what he did to his opponents. Like he killed some people, like, and you know, he gobbled them up, and when he was in the cage, and then when you see him for the first time ever, he's just looking at you, like looking at everybody, like he's confused. He doesn't know what's going on because he was bred to be an animal. Um, and that's what made his gimmick stand out, especially his wrestling style. Like, oh my gosh, he would use his opponent's momentum skillfully to body slam them and do whatever, just bash them everywhere. Um, that's what also made him stand out. Um, just torture his opponents. Boom, boom with those slams. And, okay, next is King Cuerno. I'm a fan of his because not just because of his appearance, because he had some kind of a headdress that looked like a deer god, but also because of his cold, calculating stares. Like you appear out of nowhere and just stare at his opponent, stare at somebody he's coming after, and just watch them from a distance, analyzing their every move. And he's not no dummy; he's smart. So um, that's why he's able to do a lot of stuff. Like I'm a big fan of his arrow from hell because it suits his character so well. And the way he does it is just devastating. He just jumps straight off through the ropes, just dives on his opponents, um, and they would be out. They would just fall over, um, and also I like some of his promos because they're just really intense. It just shows how how ambitious he is to reach his goals and whatnot. And yeah, pretty much it for him. And the last one is Kane. I'm a big fan of Kane because his his mic skills are just wow. I just I just it sends chills down my spine. Um, I'm not. Okay. I like his work as a masked Kane, but I like his time as a the unmasked Kane better because it just really showed how big of a monster he was. Like, cause the way the way his voice sounded and the way he would pronounce stuff was just it was just out. It was just such a harsh tone of voice, such a loud, uh, almost growling tone of voice. Wow, it was like you could totally see that he was a monster, and especially with the stuff that he did, like electrocute Shane's testicles. I was straight up monstrous and brutal, and his facial expressions and you know the snarls, the evil laughs, and the way he would stare down his opponents. It was just straight up monstrous. That's a monster right there. When you have somebody who who gets agitated, sad, and and just feeling negative because his own brother won't die, or you won't die, or you won't suffer the way he wants you to. That's just straight up monstrous right there. Because well, and not only that, but he's like, it's like, think about it. He tried to kill his own brother like several times, and the Undertaker had to put him to rest. So uh, so Kane is not someone you wanna be around, and he attacked some fans before, and because just the rage in this guy's face and everything, his soul and his past is just it just shows how monstrous this guy is, and especially when he would burn Jr. Like he set him on fire one time, and because he got mad over him thinking that he made fun of him. That's straight up monstrous right there. As far as his ring work, um, I loved how he's able to adapt his opponents like a lot of other wrestlers. He's able to choke slam him and power bomb him and whatnot, and just jump off of stuff, jump off of ropes and whatnot. So it's really unique. Um, I think he doesn't really get enough respect for that as a big guy, but that's what makes him stand out from a lot of other big guys. And just when he loses his mind during the matches over not getting the pin or his opponents doing resisting or whatnot, he just goes berserk. Uh, he gets angry too. Like you just start losing it, and that's what also makes him uh, solid in the ring. So that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts below. Like this video, comment, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week.